Hello and welcome to the Cricket News Podcast Season 4. I am Rahul Pandey, and before we kick off this episode, I would like to turn your attention to Blitzpools, our fantasy gaming partners and your well wishers. For the entirety of the Mega T20 season, Blitzpools have in line a variety of contests for you to make the most of your cricket and fantasy gaming knowledge and win big. All you need to do is to download the Blitzpools app, the link for which is in the description of the podcast. All right. That being said, time to let you know what we have installed for you in this week's podcast. Champion teams. Well, we like them, don't we? We admire them. We have to because they are champions. And when they don't win, that is when we like to think why they didn't win. So essentially, when we talk about IPL, there is no other team that has made us use this word, champion, more than Mumbai Indians, the five-time champions. But they had a difficult season this year. And so we decided it would be fantastic and insightful for all of us to have some idea about what went behind the scenes in this tough season and what went behind the scenes in the previous good ones. And so we were joined by the Mumbai Indians fielding coach, James Pamment. And we talked about a lot about Mumbai Indians, a lot about fielding and different aspects of it. And also some of the secrets from the MI camp that you would want to know. So I'm not going to give all of that in the intro. It's time for us to begin the episode talking Mumbai Indians and fielding with James Pamment. Welcome, Commander James. We are honored to have you on board. How's it going? How have you been?
Yeah, look, good. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to join you, Rahul, and obviously have a chat about things that have just transpired and perhaps look at what might happen in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. But first things first, it's some time to be called Commander James, isn't it? Just please tell me that you and the Bond in the MI family had some sort of conversation around this recently as to who'd be the better 007.
Look, it's not a self-titled moniker that I've got. I certainly didn't give the commander title to myself. So it was bestowed on me a couple of years ago by Surya Kumar Yadav, who was, I guess, taken with my enthusiasm and my loud voice and I guess my body language in general when we were at training. So he must have felt that I was very commander-like, and it certainly stuck. So I guess it's become a little bit of a figure of fun, but behind all the bravado, there's a little bit of a message there around the energy and I guess the enthusiasm that's required, from me in my role as the fielding coach. So definitely. Certainly myself and Shane Bond, we haven't discussed who would be the better Bond, but yeah, I'm happy with how the boys can get a little bit of fun out of what has been, I guess, something that they've stuck with me.
Yeah, and it's a great backstory for those of our viewers who haven't tuned into the last episode when James was on the Cricket News podcast, season 1. That is, please do. There's a nice bit of explainer there from the man himself as to how he got that designation. But there's been another question that's been bugging me for some time now. Just before Mumbai's game against Rajasthan, 13th of the season, we saw images of you giving the very commander-like speech to the boys. And what followed after that, we saw them absolutely do a job on the opposition. And even in the next game, they got a big win. Now, it is Wednesday now, James, as we record this episode, and this will be released Friday. If one of our listeners or viewers are unfortunate enough to not have a weekend off, they might need all the inspiration in the world. So can you tell us, what was it exactly that you said to the boys before the game that day?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. Look, I take great, I guess, pleasure in my life in reading about physical endeavors that individuals and collective groups have done over the years, and I was just trying to remind the guys of some of the amazing things that they'd done previously. I mean, this group predominantly has been together now for 4 seasons. We've obviously had some guys who've come in this year and the year before, but predominantly, we've done some amazing things during that time. And I was just reminding them along those lines that, get back to, what you've valued in terms of a group, in terms of individuals, and also just shared a little story about some human endeavor that I'd read about that I thought was inspirational, and just went a little bit into that. And whether it struck a chord or not, I'm not sure, but it certainly put a smile on their faces. And unfortunately, in many games this year, we haven't had a smile on our face because things haven't been going our way. So I'm not sure if it had any bearing on the last 2 results. They were significant performances for us, but I guess it just broke the ice a little bit before that game, which was incredibly important for us. It was basically going to determine whether we were still alive moving into the last game. And while our performances weren't good enough in the end, we're just missing out on run rate, that it was nice to see a smile on their face and them skip into their warm-ups with a little bit of renewed vigor.
Yeah, definitely. And it surely worked. The captain as well after the game said it was great to have someone like you in the team, and that speech surely would have worked in their favor. But talking about the season, as you rightly said, it's only natural to in sport to have the highs and the lows, and it was good to see amongst the fans that I know and in the social circle that they took it that way. As a coach, though, someone who has been with the players around the season, who has gauged the atmosphere around the team, now that the season has come to a close, have you had time to sit back and reflect on the things? What have been your observations about everything that transpired in the recent past?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you identify there, it is our role as coaches, as leaders, to be constantly reflecting and providing information or direction or clarity for players as we travel through the competition. Obviously, a very unique competition this year, with it being divided into 2 specific parts because of obviously the major outbreak in May. So very, very unique and very, very challenging for everybody involved, whether it's an administrator, whether it's a coach, whether it's a player, in terms of, the bubble lives that everybody have existed in over the last couple of years now, really, are really challenging. And while we are extremely fortunate to be well looked after, whether you're playing international cricket or whether you're playing franchise cricket, we are extremely well looked after. But the challenge of not getting away from the game is significant. You get to go back to your hotel room, and you do that repeatedly for months on end rather than days on end in these bubble environments. So so that's a big challenge for players and staff and administrators all alike. But we're in the process now of reflecting individually on our core roles in terms of the coaches, and then collectively we'll come up with some real clarity around why the season didn't go as we would have liked it, and I'm sure every other franchise is doing that, and we do that whether we're successful or whether we're feeling a little bit of disappointment, which ultimately we are, because we want to win. Everybody wants to win. So we'll note through that, and we'll work out how we can do things better moving into the future for those that are still involved going forward. But for us, it was just a little lack of consistency. If you look at, the nature of the surfaces that we played on initially over in Chennai, we didn't adapt. We've got some fantastic players within our group with amazing skill sets, but you still need to adapt and adjust to the surfaces and the opposition. And we certainly spoken honestly as a group that we didn't do that with the accuracy that we would have liked. And only having 2 wins coming out of those 5 fixtures is not a great foundation for your season, but we felt we bounced back really well. The boys took it upon themselves, especially the batting group. They took it upon themselves to be planning with more accuracy and just have a little bit more self-responsibility once we got to Delhi. And we put up 2 very good performances in Delhi to beat RR and beat CSK in that thriller when, Polly pulled something special, which he can do. We almost take it for granted at times that, Polly will rescue us, but that was very special. But we felt we got a bit of momentum, and then quite rightly so, the season was curtailed with the significant outbreak, and then it was a little bit of a period of uncertainty in terms of will it be resumed, and where will it be resumed, and what will that look like. So, once we had that clarity of where it was going to be, then it was a matter of trying to make sure we were organised. And one of the challenges for us, and like I keep saying, I'm very respectful that everybody has challenges, every group has challenges, is that, we do have quite a number of significant players involved in teams that were consistently playing throughout that period. So whether it was Quinton in Ireland, and then Sri Lanka, whether it was Bum and Rowett over in England playing Test cricket, we've had the Kiwis playing in the World Test Championship, and then they had a little break. So predominantly all our significant players were involved in periods of cricket. We had the Pandya boys who went over to Sri Lanka and had to sit around for a long period of time without, playing a lot of cricket. And then Cronulla himself got COVID. So there was a lot of underlying things which probably didn't allow us then, once we got back together, to have the freshness and the vigor that we needed to hit the ground running once we got into the UAE. And I think you look at KKR, and with the vigor and the freshness that they have attacked this second half, quite rightly, they've progressed. And I think they're a good bet to get to the final, I think, as well, because they just seem to have a little bit more freshness about them. And we struggled initially, and we lost those first three. And once we'd lost those first three in the UAE, it was once again a little bit tough to come back. But to the credit of our group, they dug deep, and I think we won three of the last four and gave ourselves a chance. But because of some of the disappointing losses we had, we were down on run rate. So to miss out on run rate is frustrating. But when you reflect, if you only win 7 out of 14, then you put yourself in that position, and that's what we did. So it's disappointing, but lots of learning individually, and lots of obviously good things happened as well throughout the tournament for us.
Yeah, those are really, really good observations, James. And
thank you.
We know you are Mumbai Indians, very much capable of making that comeback. But one of the other things that we have noticed consistently is that there is this feeling of pride among every Mumbai Indians fan. The Pulton, as you all call it. It's not just about having a team of Galacticos, these superstars, but even in the management team. There's quite the star cast. I mean, I remember watching an image of you all during the season and going, wow, that is some unit to be a part of. How does that weigh in on your shoulders as a team, as an individual, to be part of this franchisee, this setup, which is always expected to go out there and win and nothing else?
Yeah, I don't think we carry that burden of expectation, really. I think the only expectation is that we consistently try our best to perform to a high level, because 2020 cricket, especially in IPL, the games are fine margins, and it doesn't matter to a certain extent if you have the perceived best management group or an inexperienced management group. Ultimately, it's about the players who are stepping out onto the field to perform. And sometimes having too many cooks can spoil your broth. So, we try and all make sure that we're focusing on our core business. And I think if you generate and look at the history, I guess, of MI over the years, certainly the first few years, they were very lean in terms of winning competitions. So, they learned the hard way. The managers and the owners of the franchise, they learned some lessons early, and they know how to run a very good franchise. It's a very supportive franchise. I've been involved for 4 years now, and always feel very supportive, in my role, and nothing's left unturned in terms of what you need to try and perform your level at the highest degree. So, I think it's not really a burden. We've forged this period of success over a number of years, and it's exciting more than anything. And the fans, I guess, and like you say, you look at social media at times, and you look at general media and see how they're reflecting, and they reflect with great support generally, rather than huge disappointment. And that's because they've probably got that balance of they can recall the good times that they've been served up and not get too disappointed by, when things don't quite go well. We had a season in 2018 where we finished 5th and just missed out on the playoffs. We've had 2 incredible seasons where we've won it. 2019, I guess you would say it was a finer margin than 2020, with obviously Marley performing that incredible act on the last ball to beat CSK. But last year we were extremely dominant, things, and you do have seasons like that at times, who would have thought, if you watch the English Premier League and your listeners and your viewers watch the English Premier League, who would have thought that, Liverpool would fall away last year, having watched the 2 previous seasons, and Manchester City the same. Teams can be so dominant, but other teams have the right to improve. Other teams have the right to change their structure and, I guess, change their approach slightly. And that all comes along and challenges you. And if you're not quite at the top of your game, then you do run the risk of, not winning as many games as what you like to. And we don't take that as a burden. For me, it's very exciting. I work with individuals and try and improve them one-on-one. And ultimately that will try and, improve the team in my specific role. But, it's all about the players and trying to create that environment for them where they can learn and they can improve and ultimately go out there and perform to the best of their ability.
Yeah. Sounds very, very structured. And, you did mention about how your natural ability as to, fit into these situations wherein you amp up things for the team as a fielding unit, as a unit itself. And what I think is that in our current game, when the margins are just getting shorter and shorter, a strong performance on field, you reminded me of the 2019 final, I'd say the 2017 final as well, 2 low scoring fixtures. And Mumbai have done this on quite many occasions, low scoring fixtures, close fixtures. The team has sort of become this machine, or, I would say an exact spitting image of my parents not giving me money when I asked for it and said that I had to earn it. You've just said that to the opposition. We are not going to give you runs. You're going to have to earn it. So, how much of it does go behind in you? How much of it is that going into the practice sessions when you simulate those situations, or is it just something, which happens naturally when the team is in such situations in the game? How much of that do you preempt in the training sessions?
Yeah, look, we have some core principles, I guess, that we work towards. From my background working in New Zealand with New Zealand cricketing athletes, we work a lot harder on our fielding collectively than what we have done in the seasons that I've been involved in the IPL. I understand why. The management of players' energy levels is really important. But if you take a typical New Zealand fielder, cricketing fielder, and you take the typical Indian or Pakistani or Sri Lankan, predominantly they come from a base of more bat ball skills. Predominantly as a youth, as they've come through the grades, they've worked extremely hard on their bat ball skills, but not their fielding. So athletically, and I guess instinctively, the levels are a little bit lower. So I have to tailor my sessions to the players that I'm working with, and not only the technical skills, but also the aptitude and the mentality towards fielding as well. So it's important. So I also fall in line to what the head coach wants from me as well. I just don't get to do whatever I want to do. I have to fall into the greater plan that the head coach has in place, and then find that balance and work with individuals on improving them technically, help to develop, I guess, a tactical appreciation and a role and responsibility outline so that they know where they need to be and at what stage of the game they need to be, and then work on the skills that they need to do that job extremely to the best of their ability, I guess. So that is, it's a time precious environment is IPL, because you don't get that long in terms of outlining a plan and then delivering it over an extended period. So you have to be very precise with how you go about that. But there's some real core values that we work towards, and the main one is energy. So the main principle that the head coach wants from his fielding unit is energy at all stages of the 2020 performance. He wants energy. So, I have to try and make sure I get a strong message around what that looks like in different portions of the innings while we're out there on the park, whether it's in the power play initially, through those middle phases where the game can just lull a little bit. We don't want the energy to drop. And then obviously we want to push ourselves into the back phase, the death phase, from a position of strength rather than from a position of chasing the game. So, yeah, that's how we look at it. That's how we try and break it down. There's some real core values, and I share a strong vision with all the guys as they come into the team, and the ones that have been there over a 4-year period now really understand that. And then we make sure we try and be really precise with the work that individuals are doing, not so much a broad brush approach, try and get really specific with individuals around what they're likely to experience when they're on the park in those respective roles. Yeah. But like I say, I'd love to do more work with the groups that I have in front of me. I certainly could get a lot more collective improvement out of them, but I'm also very respectful that, we have to manage bodies and we have to manage energy and try and make sure we peak at the right time.
Well, time for a little break before we resume with all the cricket talk. But before that, the Cricket News Podcast Season 4 is proudly supported by Blitzpools, an app which lets you make the most of your cricket expert and cricket fantasy knowledge and ensures that you and your experience as a fan is never just restricted to watching the game. So, if you haven't already, do download the Blitzpools app right now. Like now. Yeah. But when it does come to that situation, when you do peak, it looks like an orchestra. And speaking of orchestra, one of the things that I've been a big enthusiast about in cricket, and this is not to flatter you just because you're on the episode, but from an analytical perspective as well, I think a lot has been spoken about batting and bowling in cricket. But in terms of fielding, it's a big thing in the big format of the game, which is close-in fielding, the setup inside the 30-yard circle. I know it's a big thing in Test cricket, but even in T20s, when you see games such as the 2017 final or the 2019 final, when the game is in crunch situations, these climax somehow call for a lot of drama in that 30-yard circle. Again, is it something that just happens with the flow of the game, or is it in terms of the mentality that you try and imbibe in players? How much of that goes into the discussion before games such as these?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on there, Rahul, with your observation, and our work inside the ring is really important in all phases of the game. It's not just let's get through the power play. One of the ways that we measure the energy in our group is how many singles do we give up in the initial power play, and we've improved that significantly over the last 2 or 3 years. But I think a lot of the things that you're talking about there comes down to the collective intelligence of the leaders within the group, the guys who know what's happening next, so they've got a fair understanding. They know what their bowler's trying to achieve. They've got a little bit of an insight into perhaps what the batsman does at certain stages. And then it's making sure you use that collective intelligence to be one step ahead. And when you've got experienced players who've been around the block a few times and they can do that, so whether it's Captain Rowett or whether it's Polly or somebody like Hardick's now started to play a number of games and understand that. Certainly previous to my involvement, I used to watch Mumbai from afar and was really impressed with Parthiv Patel and just how smart he was and how he used to manipulate things from his position behind the stumps, And I think if you've got a wicketkeeper of that ilk, your team is in a significantly stronger position. You can have a great captain, and most of these teams have got very good captains and very good senior players. But for me, the wicketkeeper is such an important part of your fielding effort in terms of how you do those little things that you talked about there and save key runs. And ultimately, when you talk about the 2017 final, you talk about the 2019 final, comes down to fine margins. If you've been doing that really well, and, we'll mention the name MS Dhoni and how he's been doing it over the years. There's no mistake why that team has been so good, because the leader who stands behind the stumps and sees everything is like the conductor of the orchestra, like you rightly say, and and it's worth its weight in gold. And very important.
Yeah. So probably a lot of CSK fans will be fanboying at you right now, talking about CSK as well. But we talk about IPL dynasties, and dynasties, I think, is the right word to use for Chennai as well as Mumbai. Both these franchises have been in terms of going in terms of hammer and tongs upon each other, but you guys have just created history. I mean, if we just talk about this auction cycle, what you have been able to achieve with the team this season, it's remarkable, and it's something that people all around the world, it's not just in India, everyone who knows cricket around the world has appreciated what Mumbai Indians has done as a team. But going forward, it's going to be a different thing. It's going to be a new team coming in, a new auction cycle. If you are to just sum your journey up till this auction cycle with this group, how would you do that? And what are your expectations now with a new cycle coming in?
Yeah, look, I came in at the start of this cycle. So I came in 2018 and obviously walked into the Netflix documentary called Cricket Fever we had in 2018, which, I'm sure gave a great insight to people, as you quite rightly say, around the world of being captivated and interested in not only Mumbai Indians, but the battle, I guess, with CSK and how these two teams. I think dynasty is a strong word in terms of, I think about dynasty. I think about, the Ming dynasty in China or the Romans or something like that. I think we've had two teams who've had periods of dominance over a number of years. I wouldn't quite use the word dynasty, but you can, you're allowed to do that. But it's been an amazing journey with these players, and a number of these players have obviously been involved previously, going back to 2013, and with Rohit starting off and with Polly being there at that stage, So you've had those guys who've been the constants all the way through, and they are exemplary leaders. They're not only very good cricket players, but as individuals, they're good men. They're very supportive of their colleagues, and they're challenging of their colleagues, but they know how to help people to feel comfortable, to learn and grow and get better. So they've been the constants right throughout. And then, they sort of set the standards. And we did, I guess, from Mumbai's perspective, have a disappointing 2018, having won it in 2017. But we bounced back. And while we had a slowish start in 2019, we certainly found our mojo. And we found our mojo with the development of some good young players. So one of the things that is quite close to my heart is the development of individuals, and especially young individuals. I come from a strong development background in New Zealand and was very fortunate to work with a very good group of young players who've gone on to become the core of what's been a very successful New Zealand team in recent years. And to say through a 4-year cycle that you've won 2 championships, but we've also promoted 6 or 7 players into the Indian team at different formats throughout that time as well, is very rewarding. And I know that the franchise take a significant amount of pleasure in doing that, and certainly Mr. Mukesh Ambani spoke to us last year and said it was probably number 1 for him in terms of what we've achieved over that time was the promotion of players to the Indian team. I think his son and his wife probably disagree with him a little bit. I think they'd rather have the IPL titles, but between them, they, like I say, they've got some shared values and some shared goals around developing players and winning titles alongside each other. And it's something that I'm sure the franchise will continue to look to do in the future. They're very supportive of the young players, even the young players, and you see it significantly after games are finished. Young players who've been part of MI in previous seasons but are now part of other franchises, their affection towards MI is quite interesting to observe. So they've obviously felt that they're being well supported, but it hadn't worked out for them there at MI. Either they've been taken away by another franchise at an auction, but there always seems to be that genuine affection for the support that they receive, which is good to see, and it's a nice pillar of, I guess, foundation for when you are, including new players, and if they know that they're going to be well looked after, well supported, that they can come to an environment and learn and grow. And if they stay, that's fantastic. But if they have to go, they'll remember those times they were there with good affection.
Yeah, spoken like a true coach there, James.
Thanks,
Well,
man.
it's now time for rapid fire and around, a new addition that we have introduced to this season's podcast. Just a little bit fun questions to gauge your interests and your choices here. But yeah, let's start with brushing up a bit of memory there. What's been your first cricket memory?
Oh, my first cricket memory was going along watching my father play. I was brought up in Yorkshire. Yorkshire, obviously, very passionate cricket environment, club cricket environment. Lots of cricket is played all around the villages and the towns of Yorkshire. My first memory is going along watching my father play. I can remember them winning. It was actually an 8-a-side competition. I think I would have been about 5 or 6. And they won that competition, and we brought the cup home to our house. And I think I slept with that cup for about 4 or 5 days in a row. Put it in my bed with me, and yeah, I remember little things like that. The first time I ever got my own cricket bat, once again, put it in my bed with me and wouldn't let it go for days. So yeah, those are my early memories of cricket.
Beautiful, beautiful memories then. So yeah, your childhood cricket idol.
My childhood cricket idol, probably 2. Initially being a strong, passionate Yorkshireman, it was Geoffrey Boycott. Played for England, was a very resilient, very stoic opening batsman. But once I sort of started to chart my own course and develop my own playing style, then I was always motivated by watching Ian Botham and also Viv Richards. So those, I guess, were my 2 real heroes. Once I took an appreciation for the game, but Geoffrey Boycott was probably the standout. My grandmother, she was a passionate Geoffrey Boycott supporter, and I think she influenced me a little bit. But once I could start to make my own mind up, it was definitely Ian Botham and Viv Richards. I loved the way those 2 guys played the game.
Yeah, quite the idols to have. And let's see how you. Well, I would want to know this. What's the last cricket game you watched on telly?
The last cricket game I watched on the TV was the T20 game the other night between KKR and RCB.
Well, I see you're doing your homework even after the season is done. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Please.
I was just going to say that I haven't been able to go home to New Zealand because of the border restrictions. So we've got some border restrictions in New Zealand. So at the moment, I'm based in Mumbai, and I've got to pass some time a day. Perhaps if I'd gone home to New Zealand once we'd been eliminated from the tournament, I might not have watched any more IPL this season. But because I'm here and I'm looking for something to do, to be honest, I actually sat down and enjoyed the game the other night with a single malt in my hand.
Well, I can tell you, Mumbai is grateful for you to be in Mumbai and watch these games right now. They'll be very much grateful. All right, here's a pick question. Who's your current favorite player?
I love watching Kieran Pollard play. I think it's a real pleasure for me to be up close and personal watching Kieran Pollard play. He's a fine man in general, and I just love the way he goes about his cricket. And I consider myself very fortunate to be up close watching him play. I like the test format. So, I love watching Kane Williamson bat in test matches. Very fortunate to have had a long association with Kane. We're from the same small area of New Zealand. And I also enjoy Joe Root batting as well. I think Joe Root's a fine player as well. And I really enjoy Joe Root when he's on form and playing in Test match cricket. Yeah. And I've really enjoyed actually watching this Indian team play Test cricket in recent times. I thought their performances in Australia were captivating. last year, and once again in England this year. Some of the performances were just great to watch. You know, the energy and the enthusiasm that Virat brings to the group, and the way they've integrated some of those young players, and they've played with great freedom, and it's been good to watch, actually. And I was glad that they didn't peak in the World Championship final down in Southampton, and we got to take that home, but I had to get that in tonight. But I've really enjoyed watching them play Test cricket over the last little period.
You just had to bring that in this episode. We were going so well, James, but you just had to bring that in. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll take that. Okay, so for our audience right now, I'm going to try my best to get some Mumbai Indians secrets out from Commander James. All right, James, thank you. In the MI squad, which player can we relate to most in terms of being late to the breakfast table?
Well, to be honest, we sit at the breakfast table. All the Kiwis and the Aussies are at the breakfast table, but you very rarely see any of the Indian players at the breakfast table. It was amazing, whether it's last year or the year before, just after Rohit had his young daughter, Sammy. I'd never, ever seen Rohit at the breakfast table. And then all of a sudden he appeared with his wife and young baby Sammy at the breakfast table. So there's always a lot of laughter starts to occur. I'd never seen Bumrah at the breakfast table until he got married. And I'd never seen Hardik at the breakfast table until he had his first child, Augusta. So you never see the Indian players at the breakfast table. I think they dine in their rooms, and I think they keep later hours than what we guys do, the Kiwis and the Aussies. We obviously like to get to bed at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whereas I think the Indian boys stay up a little bit later, which they can do because obviously everything happens in the evening in terms of training and playing games of cricket. But very rarely you see any of the Indian players at the breakfast table.
Well, that's how we get disciplined here. You know, the boys in India, we have to get married to get disciplined, because clearly it's tough to get a catch of us. But now coming to the bit more studious part, who is the most first row student like player in the squad?
I think the person I probably have more conversations with the game about is probably Jasprit. I think Jaspreet's a real student of the game. Yeah, he's definitely a student of his own development. He works very closely with Shane Bond around his own performance and his own development. But just in terms of general cricket conversations, I always enjoy talking to Jasprit because he's always thinking about the game quite deeply, actually.
Yeah. That is good to hear. Which player is the life of the party? We have quite a few as per our observations in the MI squad, but who do you pick?
Yeah, well, I mean, you only have to look at Hardik really and how he dresses and how he carries himself to say that. And he is the life of the party. He's a wonderful human being. It's a real pleasure to have got to know him, actually. There's no ups and downs with Hardik. This game of cricket can beat you up if you allow it to, but he's very consistent with his approach. And he's very colourful with his appearance. So he's got a few followers. He's definitely got a few followers who are trailing in his blaze, but I don't think anybody's quite reached the heights in terms of that with Hardik's definitely number one.
Well, the Pandya brothers and Karan Pollard do form an incredible trio in terms of the party on and off the field. But it's good to hear that. Which person in the coaching staff, who is the life of the party in the coaching staff?
Jeepers, that'll be who's the life? Not sure, actually. We're all pretty serious. We're all, we're not say we're not intense, we are reasonably laid back, but we're all quite serious. I haven't seen too many of them let their hair down and get too carried away. I would probably have to say Zahir, actually. He's probably the one who enjoys a few beverages at night and likes the game of poker, and but he's probably the youngest amongst us as well. So I'll probably say Zahir. He's a good man.
We've got quite a few secrets, quite a few good bits from you as far as the MI team is concerned. Well, now let's talk about some near future predictions. As we talk, two teams prepping up for a place in the final of this season's IPL. Which of the remaining three do you think can and do have the best chance to lift the trophy this season?
Yeah, I think before the final started, I was fairly convinced that Delhi would win it. I thought that they learned some pretty harsh lessons from us last year, and certainly when they beat us in the round robin game at Sharjah, I could see in the faces of some of their staff, especially, that they were very contented and satisfied with what they'd done, and potentially they had knocked us out by beating us that day. And I just thought that they had all bases covered. They played very well on a challenging surface that night to beat us. The way CSK managed to get over the top of Delhi on Sunday evening would have given them great confidence, but also would have just dented the confidence a little bit of Delhi. And it'll be a tough game this evening. So Wednesday night, obviously, KKR have played extremely well at Sharjah. I think they've won 4 games now at Sharjah. And they'll be a tough team to beat. So I still think Delhi have got the quality. If they can deliver, a performance that, the situation especially and the surface will demand, then, they can beat KKR. There's no doubt about that. But I just think that, KKR are slight favourites for me going into this game tonight because of their experiences at Sharjah. And I think if KKR do win tonight, then CSK will win the final. If Delhi do get back to go to Dubai on Friday, then I think it'll be a 50-50 game that will probably turn on one or two individual performances. And both teams have got that covered. So, it's a tough one. But if I was using your money to put a bet on, which we're probably not allowed to do, I'd put it on CSK lifting the trophy on Friday night.
Let me tell you, if you want to bet, I will give you all my money for this one. I will be all behind you on this bet. But yes,
let's see.
As for another tournament coming after the IPL, the T20 World Cup, big tournament. Which two teams do you think will play the final this year?
It's an exciting tournament. I think that's open. There's a lot of quality players going to be playing in that competition with the respective teams that are here. I think there's any number of teams can obviously go on and win it. I think even if you look at teams like Bangladesh and Afghanistan, in certain conditions, they could be a real tough team to beat. So it's an exciting tournament. And we've waited a little while now for a T20 World Cup because of the pandemic and them being cancelled. So it's an exciting time, especially on the back of an IPL. Some guys will be in form. Some guys might have got themselves out of form, but there's a bunch of international teams turning up in UAE that are ready to go. Exciting.
It's certainly going to be exciting. Mega T20 season, as we have been calling it, and should have a nice bit of finale there. But I think it's time for us to end this on a sweet, sweet note with you telling us what has your favorite memory been with the Mumbai Indians so far?
I think obviously you probably go straight to the title winning and the lifting of the trophy, but for me, that I guess the sweetest memory will be that every time you win a game, you get a cake, and I love cake. So that's probably the sweetest memories I have from the 4 years that I've had with MI, is that every time you win a game, you get a nice big cake, and can't beat nice cake.
I think that is the most literal and brilliant answer that we can get, and I think that makes for a good headline as well. Sweet as a cake. That is good. Well, it's been a sweet pleasure for us to have you in this episode. How do I put this right? I don't have a martini right now, but I would just pretend that I have it and raise it to you, Commander James. It's been a sweet pleasure for you to be with us here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always good to talk to you. And obviously your passion for the game, along with the many people around the country who love the game, it's nice to be able to share my enthusiasm with you guys. So thank you for the opportunity, and it's always good to connect.
Thank you so much, James. And that is it from us in this episode of the Cricket News podcast. Stay tuned to Cricket News for more. We'll be back next week with another episode. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cricket News Podcast. And we also enjoyed your presence. And we appreciate that. And we would love more of it in this mega T20 season. By the way, if you did enjoy the episode, would you be so kind to subscribe to the Cricket News YouTube channel and hit the bell icon just beside the subscribe button? That would be really helpful. And I will just wait and see if you are doing the same. I'm not kidding. I am going to wait and see if you are doing the same or not. Come on then, do it.